Welcome to this week's edition of the Reporter Roundtable here on the Red River Farm Network. I'm Don Wick, along with Megan Overby, Kara Hart, and Randy Coonan, as we pull out the reporter notebooks and take a look at some of those stories we've been working on this past week here on the Red River Farm Network, stories that are certainly important to our growers and ag stakeholders from throughout the region. Kara, you've been working on one of the big stories this past week, and that's the addition of a new market that's coming here to North Dakota, the crush plant that is going to be coming to Spiritwood, North Dakota. Give us the details.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Very exciting news coming earlier this week that ADM plans to build a soy crush facility at the Spiritwood Energy Park near Jamestown, North Dakota. It'll be a $350 million facility processing about 150,000 bushels of soybeans per day. ADM is taking over the site of a former Cargill malting barley facility that closed in 2018. The plant is expected to be taking soybeans in harvest 2023. So we'll see what happens. We've been waiting a long time to hear what's going in there. We've been covering this story about building a soy crush facility in that Spiritwood area for years now. And if those of you out there locally don't remember, a project was proposed in 2017 for a farmer-owned facility at the same location. Now, there was an agreement between the North Dakota soybean processors and the Spiritwood Energy Park Association that was terminated in 2019. There was a lawsuit there, and that was dismissed with prejudice in February 2020. So we've been very excited to hear the news this week. We've learned that state leadership was very instrumental in getting this ADM soybean crush facility here in North Dakota. ADM is already in the state. In a statement, Governor Burgum said the processing plant is a game changer for local farmers. And I'd have to say the local farmers we visited with this week definitely agree with that. North Dakota Soybean Growers Association President Joe Erickson was pleasantly surprised with this news. He told me ag groups actually had heard something could be coming in, just like we had, but ADM was not confirmed until they saw that press release. So there's a lot of benefits to having a soy crush facility in the state. Talking with NDSU Extension crop marketing economist Frayne Olson this week, we talked about the stronger soybean basis possibilities. Olson was thinking the basis boost may not be as strong as farmers expect, but it will stabilize things and maybe bring some more consistency to the soybean acres in the area too. Now, there's still a few questions we've got about this project. In visiting with folks closer to the action, at least from the last 2 years, they say ADM will need to retweak that existing malting facility, but it's unclear when that work will begin. I've reached out to ADM for more info too, but maybe trickier to get some of those answers. So stay tuned on the Red River Farm Network. We'll try to keep this top of mind as we go through the week. A big update, but a really big deal for North Dakota.
I would think of the addition of a crush plant like that also could mean some positive things for animal agriculture in the state of North Dakota, as well as you mentioned, with the basis. Another big story we've been following and just happened late this week has been the river shutdown with the fracture of a major beam and on a bridge at Memphis, and of course the Mississippi River, a major trade artery, and this having a significant impact. They shut this six-lane highway down, the bridge, and then everything going underneath it as well. We talked with Lee Nelson from Upper River Services. He said 430,000 tons of commodities go under that bridge each and every day. And right now they've got over 700 barges that are sidelined. Some positive news we're hearing this morning that it may be over the weekend, maybe within the next 12 to 36 hours, that we could get the go-ahead for ships to gradually start moving through under that bridge and starting to resume shipments. So that would be very positive news. A lot's going to be depend on what they see with some of the analysis. They're bringing in some outside input on that. We're learning that the priority is going to be given to some of those tank barges because of the Columbia pipeline situation, but certainly the commodities, ag commodities, will be in queue, I would think, shortly after that. So a big story. But Randy, I know you talked to a number of market analysts. It really didn't get a whole lot of market attention yesterday.
They were watching it, but basis never really moved, and that would be the first indication of a long term. But according to Tom Fitzenmeyer at Summit Commodities in his morning newsletter, he thinks that's the reason we saw that limit down move in July corn yesterday. So it impacted the futures market, or at least a good part of the reason why. Because really, you talk to the other market analysts, and there was really no fundamental reason for the markets to drop like they did yesterday. And this morning now, it looks like everybody's kind of breathing a sigh of relief. We're seeing double-digit gains here after the open this morning.
Very good. Of course, a lot of attention this week's been on that crop report, Randy. We've been waiting for the supply demand numbers. Will be even bigger in June, but really not a whole lot coming out of this week's report.
Yeah, and that's typical of this May report. It's typically a not a market mover, and again, it really wasn't this year either, except it just it wasn't bearish. It really wasn't bullish. It was more neutral. And I think traders were expecting some very bullish numbers and just didn't get it. And that was another reason for some of the sell-off yesterday. It just happened a day later than the report came out, after traders had a chance to digest it a little bit. But really, all the numbers really were within trade expectations and very close to the average of the trade expectations, not even sitting on either end of them. So really, they had that pegged pretty well.
Stocks obviously extremely tight in this soybean market in particular. So a lot of eyes on what happens here in North Dakota. I know we're not an I state, but it certainly would have an impact. Are you hearing that as well, Randy?
Yeah, definitely hearing that. And they're also talking about because we're starting to move corn this time of year versus soybeans, the tightness of that corn supply as well. And we've got a very strong P&W market. We've got we had a very strong river market. We don't know yet how that's going to play out. Thus, we've got basis trending, especially for corn. For the July-August timeframe, we're seeing corn basis up in that 40 over area out of South Dakota. A couple of the ethanol plants, Fergus Falls, the Otter Tail plant there is at 42 over, I think, for July-August delivery. Nearby, closer, not quite so high, but we're still in the 20s and 30s over the market, which is, we've never seen that up here in the Northern Plains. We're usually 30 to 50 cents under the market, and we're sitting at 30 over.
And because it's the very dry conditions, we keep talking about that drought. And Megan, you've been following that as well. There were some showers this past week, but certainly not enough to break a drought.
Yes. So regarding those rain showers that you're referencing, some areas saw some very spotty showers yesterday. A couple rain totals that we had pulled from NDON yesterday was Harvey with 36 hundredths, Wahpeton, North Dakota, 28 hundredths, Forest River, North Dakota, which is in the northeastern part of the state, only just a 1/10 of an inch. So really not enough rain to make any sort of a major impact. Over in west central Minnesota, though, we're seeing some rains this morning, and that line of showers is a big system that extended from Oklahoma through portions of Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. So really what we continue to see is the areas that need the moisture aren't getting it. Areas that probably have some pretty good sufficient moisture and not overly, wet to say, but it's going to keep that crop going, especially, like I said, in that west central portion of Minnesota.
Especially in the Western Dakotas, that grass is getting to be a pretty tough situation for our ranchers out there.
Yes, it is. And really, we didn't see any change hardly at all in all three states according to the latest U.S. Drought Monitor. 85% of North Dakota remains in extreme drought. The Red River Valley, as you inch over to the Minnesota border, is really the only exception. Northwestern South Dakota remains in extreme drought. That encompasses about 20% of the state. And again, in Minnesota, really the only dryness that we're seeing that is of some concern is in the northwestern corner of the state. And again, like you said, Don, those grasslands, really we haven't seen anybody turn cow-calf pairs out to pasture yet. They're holding off. I'm saying a lot of guys who would typically be getting their pastures ready, they're out fencing this time of year. they're saying, a couple weeks at least in delaying their turnout time. If we don't get any rain that's forecast, over the weekend into next week, well, then a lot of guys may start just dry lotting a lot of their livestock.
We're seeing a lot more cow-calf pairs and such coming to town earlier too, or they're culling pretty heavy, I would think. We've all been out talking to farmers about what's happening as far as getting the crop in the ground. Give me an idea. What have you guys heard this week?
They're pushing as hard as they can, especially if there's going to be a little bit of rain in the forecast. And the key word there's little bit. Most of the guys I've talked to, especially on Tuesday when I was out for crop watch, they were pushing as hard as they can get because there was some rain in the forecast. The downside is that rain's in the forecast, and it seems like it's always 10 days away. It never gets any nearer. And that was one of the comments I'd got from a couple of the guys there. Just we're going to put it in, and hopefully Mother Nature does her part.
Yeah, I've been hearing the same thing, Randy, just talking to farmers, same situation on our own farm, on my parents' farm. I think variable is really the key word there. The areas, like I said, that have been dry remain dry. Other people have caught more timely rains, but, really these little rains that we are catching, whether it be a 1/10, 2/10 of an inch, in most cases less than that on the North Dakota side, it's been enough to start some of this crop, but not bring it to full fruition. I know a couple farmers that Kara had talked to, they're talking, toiling with the idea of some of this wheat that was planted early. It tried to emerge, but then essentially died off because it ran out of moisture. They're even considering going and tearing some of that wheat crop up and maybe trying to put a different crop in with some of this rain in the forecast. Another thing that a lot of people have really focused on is weed management in that plan. Many farmers in the severely dry areas chose not to put down a pre-emergence herbicide. And, in some of the areas where the pre-emerge has been applied, it's still sitting in dry soil waiting on some rain.
Yeah. One thing I haven't asked either, and is what is that PP ground from last year? What's that like? Is there moisture subsoil or not? Did that dry out? I guess that's one question that I never asked, and I need to check in on that.
I was at
Randy, I've heard it
Litchfield,
mentioned several
North Dakota
times
on,
that that's
I'm
the
sorry.
case.
I was in Litchfield, North Dakota on Wednesday on our Pioneer Agronomy update, and that was kind of the ground zero for PP last year. Uh, we learned about 90% of the corn is already in the ground as of midweek this week. The one thing I noticed was just so much salinity. It was pretty obvious. We went from very wet conditions to dry conditions this spring, and they've got some very tough problems facing them as far as high saline right now. So that'll be one consideration, obviously.
Yeah, and I've seen that too when I was out driving around. You see it in more spots than you typically would in a normal year.
No doubt. Let's talk about what's going on in some of the policy world. St. Paul should be in the final stages of this legislative session, but it looks like they're going to have to go into special session. Kara, what are you seeing?
That's right, Don. It sounds like we're hearing the same things that you're hearing too. Minnesota lawmakers are not going to finish their work in the state legislative session by Monday, that constitutional deadline. That special session certainly will be necessary. It could happen sometime in June, but we're still confirming a few of those details, and hopefully we'll get more later on today. Now, I know, Dawn, you'd visited or maybe had heard from House Speaker Melissa Hortman. She was saying that even if they had all the budget targets together, and this is a big year for setting the budget in Minnesota, it still would take time for staff to compile those and get the bills together so they could be voted on, and they still wouldn't be done by Monday. So there's a lot of things at play here. There's the Governor Walz's emergency powers. That's a political issue happening. There's that California Clean Cars Initiative. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is moving forward with the adoption of that, and Senate Republicans believe that the legislature, not the agency, should be responsible for those air quality standards, and a government shutdown had been threatened if the rule is not rescinded. Now, Ag Group's certainly disappointed that the state legislative session is not happening not getting their work done on time. So visiting with Minnesota Soybean Growers Association Executive Director Joe Smentek yesterday, the budget negotiations, he said, will now likely happen behind closed doors without a lot of sunlight on the negotiations. And lawmakers probably won't be seen until there's a deal. So still a lot of unknowns, and transitioning a little bit from the state legislature too. Oh, I guess I should also add that COVID money is coming down the pipeline for states too, and we'll keep an eye on that in our region. Transitioning over to DC, we're still continuing talks about what tax policy could mean for agriculture. We heard from Catherine Tai twice in hearings this week, and then I think it was yesterday, the Senate confirmed the Deputy Ag Secretary Jewel Brana. So a lot going on in policy world.
Of course, we're all looking at that infrastructure bill. Senate Republicans met with President Biden yesterday in the White House, and there appeared to be maybe some compromise that is possible. We'll wait and see. That's been hard to come by in DC as of late, but keep an eye on that infrastructure bill. There may be some news on that coming up next week. So a lot going on as always, and we certainly appreciate all of your work and what's happening in this world of agriculture. Busy time, and we wish our farmers much success getting this crop in and getting things off to a good start as well. So thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Thanks.
That's our reporter roundtable. Again, I'm Don Wick, Megan Overby, Carol Hart, Randy Coonan. We're the Red River Farm Network. Thanks for tuning in and being a part of our latest update.